welcome back to my channel. So this week's technique is actually quite exciting, I think. I do say that about every week really, but you can make a call for that. So I have decided to do a demonstration to show you how to work with beading or embroidery within your knit, so integrated, I would say. Now of course you can actually do it the normal method, which is simply knitting and embroidering over it, I guess, but this can actually be quite helpful and useful when you are knitting, and you know, depending on what you really do with it, you can do so much. Now I have done it using a tool. Now I know you can do it with a needle and thread as far as I'm aware, but this is how I usually tend to go around it. Now definitely try out all methods to see what works best for you, but this is usually how I do it. Now I've used a few different beads just to show you variations as usual. Now underneath these sequins are these little pearl beads, and you can see that it's just basically integrated within the knit, so it's not sewn over or anything. So that's the back of the swatch where the sequins lie, and then the front is where these pearl beads show a bit better. So again, just see how you get on, and obviously be aware of like which side your techniques are going to be showing. So you can obviously incorporate other techniques within this, but this is quite basic and simple. Now I have, and I will be, now I have linked the tool below, and also the demo for elongated stitch, which is what we've used in part of the swatch. So it's all down below if you need to go back and have a look. Now if you do have any questions, let me know, and I hope you enjoyed this one because it is quite fun actually. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so I have actually done a little bit prior to well, showing you. So I'm just going to follow this sort of layout. Now I am using 2 yarns for this technique, and one of them is just 2 ends of sewing thread because it's quite fine and it actually works really well, and then the other one is just 4-ply mercerized cotton. Now I do tend to use the mercerized cotton quite a lot because it's quite easy to knit with just for demonstrations, but again, do not just stick with the yarns that I show you. Do try and experiment because there's so much more that you can do with other fibers. Okay, right, so now for this technique I am going to be using a tool which is actually called a needle threader, and you can see it's got a small hook right at the end there, and that is very small. Now I just call this an embroidery tool, but it's actually not, it's just a needle threader. I will link it down below in the comment section where you can get this tool. It's basically used to thread up the needles in linkers, so in those Hague linkers that you get. So it's actually quite easy and not expensive to buy at all, and it's really handy for doing some embroidery or bead work on knitting machines. Now again, there is actually other methods of doing this. I'm just showing you one of them. Okay, so this is the one that I normally use. Okay, so we'll start off by doing like an easy one, which is basically these sequins. So I've got these round sequins lying around, and it's already got, actually it's not got a hole. I actually had gone ahead and punched them. It was a while ago. I thought they come with holes, but they actually don't. So this is a really good method of using sequins if you'd like to. Okay, so now I'm just going to knit a couple of rows in my sewing thread, and I am knitting on tension 5 and 2 ends. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll do a few different angles of this technique just so you can try and have a close look to what I'm doing. Okay, so step number 1 is to simply put the needle, or the threader, sorry, the tool through the eye of the sequin. Okay, so it's right all the way through, and what we're going to do is simply, so just select a needle that you'd like to place this on. Okay, so I am selecting this one here, and all I'm doing is really just picking the stitch. Okay, so kind of like how you use your latch tool. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and place the hook on that stitch there and just drop the stitch off that knitting needle, okay? And carefully just thread it right through the sequin and place the stitch back onto the hook. It's harder to show than it is to do. Okay, there we go. And now it's placed on the needle. So I'm obviously going to show you quite a few just so it's a little bit clear, okay? Step number one, as I said, is to put the thread through the eye of the sequin, and we'll select the next needle. Again, it is actually a lot easier to do than to demonstrate, I must admit. So select the stitch or the needle that you want to place a sequin on, put the hook, the tool, through that stitch and drop that stitch off the needle, and just pull that stitch through the eye and place it back on the needle. So open the latch if you must, okay? We'll do 2 more. Actually, we'll do 1 more. Okay, the noise in the background is either my chair or my dog snoring, so do excuse me. Right, so through the hook, select the stitch, drop the stitch, place it through, and then oops, and then just place the stitch back on the needle. It's actually quite simple. And then now, depending on the kind of like beads or sequins you're using, it might be easier for you to just push those needles forward, okay? And we're going to go ahead and knit a few rows. And now it's placed on there. Okay, so my idea of a demonstration is to show you a few different beads. So that one is, I think, the easiest. Well, I don't know actually. That one's the easiest for me. Okay, so again, I'm showing you a couple of different methods. Now, we've done that one. Now, the other one that we're going to try and do is actually going to do it through elongated stitch, okay? So I'm pushing these needles forward, open up your latches. Now, if you do remember how to do the stitch from my very first video, I think it was, or the first week, I don't know, go ahead and go try to do the stitch prior to this swatch, and you'll get like a good, okay. So if you don't quite remember how to do the elongated stitch, you can refer back to the tutorial, which I will link below in the comments, okay? If not, you can just have a look at this video, really. So push the needles slightly over to the back. And what we're going to do is now we're going to use the mercerized cotton to do the elongated stitch on these needles that we've selected, okay? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually like cheating a little bit, because as opposed to knitting all of these needles, I'm only knitting on these needles. Again, you can really do what you want to do with this, okay? So I'm going to place my yarn over all of these needles and individually knit them all the way to the back of the bed, creating a longer stitch length. Now, this is really handy to do if you are planning on doing a longer beads, okay? Now, because the stitch length otherwise is quite small, so it's actually quite hard to get those stitches through the beads, okay? So the next one we're going to use is this round black bead, and the hole is actually a decent size. I don't know if you can see, it's quite hard. Okay, and again, I'm going to go ahead and put it through my tool, so it's there, and I am going to take that stitch off the needle, thread it through the bead, and then place it back. Now, this yarn is slightly more tricky because it's 4-ply yarn. Okay, again, I'm going to go over the second bead, and we'll leave about 3 stitches in between, and then thread it through and place it back on the needle. Now again, it does look extremely time consuming. It is time consuming, but honestly, once you get the hang of it, it actually can be quite quick. I'm really definitely not lying. I've seen people do garments with this technique, so okay. And there you go, the beads are hanging off the stitches. And now I'm just going to push these needles forward. Sometimes you just kind of want to hold it down, okay, and I'm going to knit across. There you go, and these beads are within the knit. Okay, so we are now going to do another bead. Okay, so we're going to do a slightly smaller one. These are like your pearl beads. So these are the little ones. Right, so now for this bead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the elongated stitch again, but I'm going to use the sewing thread to do so, okay? So again, push your needles forward, place it slightly over to the back and knit them individually, one at a time. Pull them down. And pick your bead. And then just put the tool through the bead and do the same thing again. Okay, so I'm going to show you a slightly different angle, so hopefully it's a little bit more clear. Okay, so I've put the bead through the tool, and all I'm going to do is grab that stitch, undo it on the needle, and then put the stitch through the bead and place it back on that needle. Okay, I'm going to do another one. Now you want to be a bit careful of the kind of yarn you use for this technique. Because I'm using two ends of the sewing thread, what happens is when I'm trying to place a stitch back after putting the bead through, it only like takes the one end, okay? So you can use a fine yarn that is a single-ended instead of using two fine yarns to create one. There we go. So hopefully that looks a lot easier. Okay, so another tip for you is, now if you do the elongated stitch, you can actually put two beads through. So all you've really got to do is put, oops, just creating a mess and all my beads are everywhere on the table. So all you've really got to do is put two beads on your tool, okay, and then follow the same technique. Sadly, these two beads are not going to fit through that length of stitch, so you've got to pick something a little bit smaller almost. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and knit across, push my needles forward and knit. And then that's your technique. So that was actually quite quick, but I thought it would be quite nice to actually show you something quite simple and something quite basic, and you know, you can actually go ahead and experiment with it. Now, like I mentioned in the start of the video, there are other methods of doing beadwork or embroidery within your knit, and I'm sure there's other videos around, so this is not like an invention or anything, but I thought, you know, sometimes you like to sort of watch videos of like one teacher or one demonstrator, and it kind of explains to you a little bit better, so I thought it would be nice to add this to the playlist. Okay, so if you do have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments below, and I will obviously link that tool down below. Now, the one thing I forgot to mention actually is before you buy any beads, now the one thing I forgot to mention is when you do go to buy your beads, it'd be handy to take your tool along so you can actually see if that fits through the whole of the bead, okay? Because some beads are actually quite small and this is not going to work for that, and then that will be when you kind of follow the other methods for embroidery within your knit. Obviously you can actually go back to your normal method of beadwork and embroidery, which is just hand stitching, but again, this is a really nice way to incorporate it within your knit as opposed to doing it after. Okay, so I really hope you enjoyed that technique, and I really do hope that was clear for you to see. If you do have any questions, I'll leave them in the comments below, and again, follow me on Instagram, follow me or subscribe to me on YouTube, and do share my channel with your friends or your fellow knitters. Don't be greedy. Well, anyway, I hope you have a good time knitting. I'll see you next week. Bye.